I want to introduce myself, Mike Westphal here at McDonald Garden Center, and this is Carly. So I'll let you say hi real quick.
Hi, I'm Carly. I've been on here once before. Thanks for having me back. I'm here to talk about houseplants, holiday houseplants. So I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me, everybody.
Yep. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is holiday houseplants. A real quick review on kind of what's going on here at the Garden Center. We've got our wreath making workshop this weekend, so we couldn't be more excited about that. It's a lot of fun to make a boxwood wreath. You can't get fresher than making your own. We cut the boxwood locally, and we've got it here at the Garden Center, and it's at both locations, so you can go and make it's mirrored.
Okay.
So hopefully you can see us. Sorry, we're working from a different device, so bear with us while we get everything kind of honed in here. But hopefully we're okay. And so we've got the wreath making workshop, so you definitely want to come in and check that out. You can either walk in or you can prepay. You can go to our website and prepay and reserve your spot. It is a limited seating, so hopefully you can get into that. I think right now there's currently plenty of spots open. Next week, I've got my last webinar, and I think I'm going to have Carly come back and help me out with that one because we're going to do gifts from the greenhouse. And so that's going to be a lot of fun to be able to see all of those great gift ideas that we have here at the Garden Center. If you've got a gardener that's a loved one or a friend that you're going to be giving a gift to this year, then you might find some great gifts here. Of course, we've always got gift cards that are a great gift, and we'll talk about a lot of different things next week for our last webinar of 2021. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for everybody for watching this year. It's been another chaotic year, but it's been a lot of fun. We hope you got out in the garden. We hope you were able to learn a lot through our webinar series, and we're going to continue to do it in 2022. So we couldn't be more excited about that. We'll talk more about that next week. But we're going to talk about holiday plants. So this is my kind of garden guru's guide to holiday plants for this year. As Carly mentioned, she's going to kind of talk more about houseplants. She has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to indoor plants and growing, just greenery or, foliage plants. And of course, holiday plants are so much fun. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the outdoor plants, because that's kind of a little bit more my passion, but we'll kind of help cover the entire gamut of all of your holiday plants that you can use for the holiday season. So we hope you enjoy. So bear with us for a second. I'm gonna bring up on my computer over here, hopefully, the comment section. So that way I can see any comments that are made here. All right, so we definitely want to tell everybody to feel free to make comments. So no matter what your if you're watching out there and you've got questions regarding to plants or anything, let us know what your questions are. Let us also know where you're watching from. That really helps us kind of get an idea of where everybody's watching from, and so we can say hello to you and happy holidays. But okay, I think we're pretty much there. So we're going to go ahead and get ready. So today we're doing holiday plants, the Garden Guru's gift or guide to holiday plants. And there's so many different things that you can choose from. If you come into the Garden Center, you're going to see a ton of plants throughout the Garden Center, indoors and outdoors. Now, of course, the indoor plants, there's a huge selection right now. So Carly had it a little bit easy this time to pick out the plants. There's so many to choose from. And I went to the outdoor plants, which there's still a lot to use. So we're going to do kind of our top 5. We're also going to do some honorable mentions. So we've both got some honorable mentions that maybe we kind of feel like we're a little bit of a broader category, but also some things that we love to talk about when it comes to plants during the holiday season. So, Carly, if you got anything to add, feel free to add.
Not really. No, I think you've said it all, but I can start first. If
sure. Yeah, all right, Carly, cool. Go for it. Start with your honorable mention.
All right. So my honorable mention are tiny, excellent potted plants from our sassafras collection here at the Independence location. We also have these at our Great Neck location, even though we don't have a sassafras yet at our Great Neck location. You can find these as well. And these are really great if you're just ready to give a gift to somebody, or you can give it to yourself. Everybody needs to, have self-care this season as well as giving to others. But this would probably be better for the gift guide next week, but I do think you have a really great selection of plants in these containers. You have a little cute polka dot plant, some kalanchoe. We even have like a little cypress in here. So you can repot these plants as the season goes on. You can save this container for next year and repot it. We also have a lot of other varieties of things. We finally have Grinchmas trees again, which I think is a really really great honorable mention. People love these little cypress trees, and they're bound to be kind of tilted, just like the Grinchmas tree from The Grinch Stole Christmas. So this is really great for kids' room, or even just like if Grinch stuff is your decor. I know my future sister-in-law loves Grinch things, so this might be for you, Taylor. And then we also have adorable frosty moss ferns, and I think I said that wrong, but frosted moss fern. It looks like moss to me, but it is a fern variety. And the best part about frosty ferns is that they literally look like they have a tad of frost on them because they have the white tips to the fern. And these are really beautiful. These will last you if you take good care of them all year round. And the more light you give these plants, the more you'll have those white tips along the moss. And of course they have very cute elf shoes poking out of them. So another really great gift, or a gift for yourself. So those are kind of my honorable mentions for right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Carly. Yeah, gift giving has definitely started, and people are starting to have holiday parties again. And so if you're going to a party, it's a great thing to bring a gift. And there's nothing better than a living gift that's going to last years and years and years. So we've got a huge selection. I mean, that's just a very, very small, tiny sampling of some of the great gift ideas, whether they come pre-potted, or you can always just pick out a plant, slip it in a pot. It's so easy to do. We've got a huge selection of pots that you can slip in your plant, and then you can give it as a gift, and it's so easy to do. So hopefully you can come in and check out that. As she mentioned, sassafras is here at the Independence store. We couldn't be more excited about it. It's been awesome. It's been a huge success this year, having all of those little gift pre-potted, pre-prepared plants all ready for you to grab and go. So if you're in a rush, you can swing in here. We're open 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. So you can swing in, pick up some plants as gifts, or pick up some plants to give to yourself, as she mentioned. So great ideas. So, okay, my honorable mention for when I get into the outdoor area. So if I'm working out in the yard and I'm looking for something maybe new or unique that I haven't planted in a while, then comes to mind is Euphorbia. Euphorbia is an awesome, awesome plant. It's a perennial. It's actually evergreen, so you can almost classify it as a small shrub if you wanted to, but there's a huge selection of Euphorbias. This one is called Miner's Merlot. Most Euphorbias in this area love full sun. They can actually take a little bit of shade. They're great in containers, so a mixed container. They work amazingly well in a mixed container. They grow great in a kind of a, drier soil. So if you've got kind of, and Carly's gonna show some other ones here for me, because I like to talk with my hands, so I've always got my hands moving. So look at all these colors. I mean, I absolutely love these. That one is called Ascot Rainbow, which is one of my all-time favorites because you get kind of that variegation in there, and you get those little red tips and the red stems. And then this one, let's see if I might not have grabbed one with the label on it. Let's see if I can get the name on this one. This one is Glacier Blue. So basically a white and a green variegated. Variegation has become so popular recently. In fact, a lot of my plants have some variegation in it. It's super, super popular to kind of look for different foliages and different types of things. These also bloom. So typically they're gonna bloom in the kind of the late summer, fall season. But here in this area, they really can kind of bloom at any kind of random notice. Sometimes you'll see them in the spring here at the garden center, and they'll have full blooms on them. They're kind of different. The bloom looks very similar to the leaf, to the foliage, but it's got kind of almost, I don't want to say like a UFO look, but kind of a different look. So it's not really known for its bloom. It's really grown for its foliage. It's evergreen. They're super, super easy. Full sun. They take a pretty dry soil. So if you've got a dry spot, think of like not quite as dry as maybe cactus and succulents, but pretty dry. And then if it starts to get a little bit too kind of, it'll tell you, it'll start to wilt a little bit, then, just give it a little bit of good soaking. But they're really, really easy to grow. I love Euphorbias. And this is just 3 of a bunch of different varieties. And right now, it's cool to always walk around the garden center, as I tell everybody around this time, to come and check out the garden center every week because we always are getting in new plants. And Euphorbia was not something that came to my mind right away, but when I saw it, I said, ooh, I got to talk about this because it's one of my all-time favorite plants. So come in and check out Euphorbia. That's my honorable mention.
Yeah.
So now we'll go with our top 5s.
Exactly. And I do have to talk about Euphorbia for a sec because it's one of my favorite perennials of all time. It's super easy to grow if you're a houseplant owner to start, like I was. Moving out into outdoor plants is a little scary just because you control your situation as a houseplant owner. But Euphorbia was one of my first outdoor plants, and it has been the easiest plant to grow. I basically neglect them, but they still do need water. They need lots of light. And one of the best attributes that you can't really see on camera about them is that they're super soft. They feel almost like lamb's ear in a weird way. They have really, really soft foliage, so they're really nice to touch as well. I like plants that are nice feeling as well as looking. So, and that might be the houseplant person in me, touching my plants all the time. So Euphorbia is a really great honorable mention. Love that one.
And there's some Euphorbias for indoor plants as well.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if you've ever grown a Euphorbia inside, then you can definitely grow this one outside. It's super easy. Absolutely. And they're very cold tolerant. So I think they're hardy to about 0 degrees outside, so you don't even have to worry about the winter, don't have to worry about the summer. They love the summer. So really, really great plant. So,
and the Ascot Rainbow, this variety, even changes colors throughout the year because of the cold. So this really bright red color you see on the tips will get really red in the winter because that cold, and then it will turn more green in the summer. So you even get that almost like change of the leaves feel for this plant without losing any leaves. So that's the best part. So there's a million things to say about these plants, but an amazing honorable mention.
Yeah, and deer and rabbit resistance. So for our people out there that have deer and rabbit issues, then you've got a great option as well. Take a second and say hi to Jackie. So make sure we can see our comments. So feel free to make comments throughout this, ask questions. All right, now we're going to run through our top 5. So this is our true top 5 list. We each have 5. So a little bit more houseplant related, indoor related, a little bit more outdoor related for me. So I'll let Carly roll with her first number 5.
Cool. All right. So my number 5 is holiday cactus. And I think holiday cactus is a really great way to add blooms to your space during the season. Now, most of the plants I've picked for my top 5 are bloomers, but I think this is a really great plant to get started with, especially if you're a beginner houseplant owner. So it's not very scary. There's not a lot of difficult care, but it just definitely needs water more when it's blooming than when it's not blooming. And the bloom cycle happens in the winter, and if you want it to keep happening that way, then you'll have to kind of train it throughout the summer and fertilize it at the right times. But I usually fertilize mine during the summer months, and then I stop once it starts hitting around fall time. And I even try to acclimate it to a cooler environment. So maybe turning your air conditioning down just a tad, stuff like that, leaving it in a darker space can push those buds out. And you can see these, a lot of our ones that we have in the store right now already have bloom buds on them. The 6-inch size is pretty popular around here because you got a full bunch of little sprigs here, and you can get them in multiple colors as well, which is really great, so it can match your decor. So we carry red, pinks, a couple different kinds of pink. This is one of the darker kinds, but we have really light, almost corally pink, and then we also carry white, and sometimes we carry yellows and oranges, but most of the time it's those main 3 colors. And I think they're just a really fun cactus. Also, they tend to live for a really long time if they are taken care of really well. So I even have my own cactus that was inherited from my future mother-in-law, who inherited it from her grandmother. So that's like an 80-year-old cactus. Awesome. Which is awesome. So the life can carry on through your cactus, and if you have an old heirloom cactus, let us know about it in the comments below, because we love to hear about those kinds of things here at the Garden Center, the stories of your plants and family and plants. That's all about the holiday season, right? So giving the gift of almost a lifelong plant is, I think, really touching when you're in the giving season. And we can also, you know, these aren't pre-planted in pretty pots, but we can also do that for you at our houseplant section at both of our year-round locations. So if you're looking to have a really pretty wrap around this, or even get it potted into a permanent pot for whoever you're giving it to, or even yourself, then we can do that for you here as well. But this is my number 5, holiday cactus.
Yeah, holiday cactus is a great one, and you're right, there are so many people that I see have stories of how they've had it for years and years and years. I mean, decades. And so it's such a cool plant, and it reminds you of the holidays if you can get it to bloom at the right time every single year. But even if it doesn't bloom, it's a great green plant, and it's super easy to grow, and so can't beat a holiday cactus. And there's a lot of different ones in there. So I know that's why we kind of say holiday cactus, because there's Thanksgiving cactus, there's Christmas cactus. I don't know, is there an Easter cactus?
There is an Easter cactus,
so I mean,
yeah.
you know, it doesn't really matter. We call them holiday cactus here, so that you know that you can kind of train it however you want to train it. So we saw a question there. I think it was Trina. So Trina was asking what was the plant before the one that changes colors. So the one that we were talking about that changes colors is part of the Euphorbias. So these are the perennial Euphorbias. If you were talking about the one before this, if you missed it, Carly was talking about some indoor gift plants. So that's what we did first. So if you were asking about her honorable mention, it was gift plants, which were like little you know, combinations, like this little spruce with the polka dot plant and the Cal and Chloe. And then of course she had some frosty ferns and a Grinchmas tree. So if that's what you were asking about, she kind of did a ballpark, big broad spectrum of just gift plants, which there's a huge selection here at the Garden Center. So Trina, if you were asking about that, it was gift plants was her honorable mention. My honorable mention was the Euphorbia. And then now that she's done her number 5, which was holiday cactus, it's my turn. So my number 5 is going to be ivy. And so you might say, well, that's kind of weird. Ivy is a weird choice because a lot of us probably deal with ivy issues outside. But I kind of picked this because, one, we've got a great selection right now. So there's lots and lots of different types of varieties of ivy out there, but right now we've got a great selection. Ivy was in huge demand probably during the spring and summer of 2021, and so it was very, very hard to actually get our hands on some of them, but now we've got a great little collection of ivies. This is just your basic green. This is called an Algerian ivy, so just a regular green ivy. We've got a great collection, and I also brought this up because I know I'm kind of, you know, sticking to the outdoors, and we've got them outdoors right now, but you can grow them inside too. So ivy's very versatile, very easy to grow. One of my favorite plants. Indoors, I think I always hear people say let it get a little bit drier on the drier side. Mm-hmm. So you want to let them dry out a little bit. They don't, in the outdoor areas of our homes, they can grow in very, very deep shade to a little bit of sun. But indoors, you might want to give them more in like the medium light, I think.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, so very, very easy plant. But the reason that I really picked ivy was because of my all-time favorite. This is the Morengo Ivy, I believe. Yep, so Morengo Ivy. So this is my all-time favorite. As I mentioned, variegation earlier, I love variegated plants, and this one is just absolutely stunning. So I know everybody's looking for those albos and all those different types of variegated plants, but this one is super easy to find. We've got a good collection right now. It grows really quickly. I've got a little pot of it on my front porch, and just a nice terracotta pot, just a low bowl, and it just spills out onto the steps, and I absolutely love it, and it looks great year-round. And you can keep this outside, or you can grow it inside. So if you're looking for just a little pot of something for your mantle indoors, this is a great little pop of variegated color. And of course, we've got other variegated ones. So we've got the Gold Child Ivy, which is a really cute little tiny mini leaf with a little almost kind of yellow to gold color in the center of the leaf. A nice little variety. And then the last one that I grabbed, I think, is just green ivy, but you can see it's a little bit more of a serrated leaf. So it's got that sharp kind of arrow point. So lots and lots of choices with ivy. I absolutely love them, and they're super easy to grow, and you can grow these outside in your landscape as well. So a lot of people, you know, get a little bit worried about it, but it's pretty easy to contain, especially some of these varieties that maybe aren't quite as aggressive as our native wild ivy that we're always trying to sometimes get rid of. But really, ivy's a great ground cover. It's evergreen, and it's easy to grow. And as long as you keep it kind of off your trees from growing up your big trees, you really won't have many issues with it. It's a great evergreen ground cover for a shady place around your landscape, but also inside your home. So that's my number 5 is ivy. Looks great tucked around other plants. Great in combo containers. I love using this one in combinations. So there's lots and lots of great opportunities to grow ivy in and around your home. So that's my number 5.
That's a great number 5. And like Mike said, that is also a houseplant. You can use as a houseplant, so you can either bring them in or just keep them outside all year round, especially if you have them in containers on your porch. Or you can just switch out your annuals with ivy, but that's a really popular combo.
Yep.
So if you have pansies with your ivy right now, you can switch them out for begonias or whatever you have in the spring. So that's always a really great choice. I saw that Eleanor had a comment about her holiday cactus. Just kidding. I just saw it. Let's see if I can scroll.
Mine bloomed vigorously for many years. I didn't do anything with them. Last year, no blooms. This year, 1 flower on 1 plant.
Okay, so sometimes it just depends, but you could try to fertilize it a little bit more this coming year around. So sometime during the summer months, you'll want to start fertilizing your plant, and even you won't quite see blooms on it yet, but doing that during the late summer will help get you those blooms in the fall and winter. But sometimes also, if your holiday cactus is kind of old, sometimes it gets tired of blooming. So depending on how old it is, usually this plant's life is between 50 and 80 years. That's a guesstimate too.
Right.
So it just depends on how old your cactus is. I know the oldest one I've ever seen just stopped blooming the 5 years before it died. But it was like almost an 80-year-old cactus. So just kind of suss that out for yourself and see if you can try to fertilize it. But I would try to fertilize it anyway, and just lightly fertilize it if you never really have done that before. We have a really great selection of fertilizers that Mike carries in Garden Supply. Anything from green leaf, granular fertilizer that we have, I use that all the time for pretty much everything. Or you can try a Schultz indoor cactus fertilizer, which I also use all the time on my holiday cactus. So really great choice there. And you could definitely try to get it to bloom again if it's not too old. But hopefully it isn't.
And then we also said, so take a second and say hi to Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
And also, she just got her holiday cactus in Amaryllis, so that's awesome.
Yay.
Maybe Amaryllis will pop up in a little bit. We'll see.
Yep.
All right. So then so Betty said, you can't train your holiday cactus to bloom at a different time. They are different species, and you can tell the shape by the leaves. Yes, that is true. So there are specific varieties that will bloom at specific times throughout the year, but there's still a little bit of that. By training, I mean what you have to, the process of what you have to do to get them to bloom, which is the fertilizer, the cooling down, all of those different things.
Yes, so it's more the process than the training.
But if we've got cactus in now, typically they'll bloom somewhere around Thanksgiving, Christmas, depending on the variety.
Exactly.
All right, so let's see. My number 5, or sorry, we were done with my number 5, Ivy. So now it's Carly's turn for number 4.
Number 4. Okay, cool. So I kind of cheated. I have actually 2 number 4s, but they're both actually either indoor or outdoor, so it kind of all melts together. But I'm going to start with the indoor azaleas we have right now that our houseplant buyer has brought in, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Azaleas you can train similarly to bonsai. So since they're an outdoor tree and they can be kept inside with fairly high light to get them to bloom, they're a really great houseplant if you're able to keep them. They like to be fairly moist, especially when they're blooming. And if you're keeping them in a shallow kind of bonsai shaped pot, you'll want to probably water them more often than you would in a deeper pot. And I always try to plant these up in pots with some kind of granular rock, pebble, something for the roots to hold on to a little bit more and give it some extra drainage so it's not sitting in mucky water, because these definitely don't want to be overwatered just as well as they don't want to be underwatered. And not only are they great for an indoor extravaganza bonsai, but you can also just plant these outside if you want to as well. So since we don't have them as much outside blooming right now, you can still have them indoors for the season, and then once the frost is over, just pop them in the ground again and they're good to go. But this is a really, really great option if you're looking for something for a person who already knows how to garden, or maybe already wants a new project. Maybe not somebody who's new to gardening at all, which you guys are a lot of savants here on the live here all the time. So we want to give you guys those options as well. And never forget yourself. That's what I always say. But and then I also have the Lavender Topiaries, which we also keep in houseplants, and this one's in one of the cute containers that I mentioned in a previous live with Mike. But these, of course, smell amazing because they're lavender. So just touching them, and then your hands smell great all day long. But they can be used for food, so it's an herb still. It's just shaped in the topiary tree shape, so you can use it for you know, any meal you make, as well as it just being a really beautiful accent in your home for the holiday season. These can also be planted outside in a different situation, probably a little more shady if I'm correct, and definitely like not too wet, of course, but Mike probably could talk more about the outdoor care on a lavender tree, but indoors you want them to dry out a tad between waterings, and you want to give them as much light as possible. Sometimes people even keep these under grow lights to make sure that they're blooming, or even just keep that regular new growth coming in all the time. So, and to keep your topiary shaped, of course, you'll have to prune it over time, but another great option.
Yeah, so lavender outside is one of those plants that everybody always wants to grow and seem to always have trouble with, because I always say, think about where lavender and rosemary, you know, grow is in Italy. And so, you know, you think of that, those clay, those hillsides, good drainage, good weather, and really what it is humidity. So, and typically here during our summer months, it's super, super humid, and that's when people most likely struggle with lavender or rosemary, because we get so humid and they like a more of an arid, dry. They're fine with the temperature. The heat, they can take. It's the humidity. So when we get really muggy in this area, I love to grow them in containers because you can kind of control the humidity level a little bit better. If you've got a well-drained area, you know, a lot of people are very successful with rosemary. Rosemary is a little bit more hardcore than lavender, but once you get lavender growing, it'll last years and years and years. You'll never have to worry about it. It's an evergreen outside. It blooms with those gorgeous flowers in the summer months. Really, really an easy plant when you find the right spot. And what that means is probably good airflow and good drainage. And typically in a container, I can move it, I can change its environment slightly, and so that's why I love to grow lavender in a container. Rosemary I'll typically plant right in the ground because it's a little bit more hardcore. But once you get in the right spot, these plants, both of them will last a long time. So great selections. I love the azalea. The azaleas are super cool. I mean, pretty. We used to do a lot of forced azaleas for Easter, but having some at Christmas time, she's right. That's a great gift for a gardener. Or yourself, because you can enjoy it. It reminds you kind of a little bit of, you know, spring, but it gives you this gorgeous bloom. I love that. It's got like a marbly look to it. So really, really cool selection there. All right, so now to my number 4. Oh, wait, we did see a couple questions come through. Eleanor asked about should she repot her holiday cactus, but Betty answered your question. She answered it spot on, which is they do like to be root bound. You don't want a lot of excessive soil around a holiday cactus. And so being a little bit root bound is fine. But if you feel like you need to grade up slightly, go into a slightly bigger pot so you're putting a little bit of extra soil around it so you've got some room to grow, but do it once it's done blooming. So. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the perfect answer. That's what I would have said.
Thank you, Betty.
Yay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so now my number 4 is lemon cypress. So I kind of almost wanted to group everything of conifers together, but I absolutely love lemon cypress. These have become so popular, and it's the fragrance that everybody loves. I mean, it's got this citrusy kind of cool fragrance to it, but I am absolutely in love with this chartreuse green color. I mean, it's just an absolutely gorgeous color. It looks great with reds. It looks great with any kind of color. It's just that great contrasting color. And I really, really like this plant because you can grow it indoors or out. So again, I'm kind of crossing the boundaries a little bit. Indoor, you know, super, super bright light. You want as much light as you possibly can get on it. A little bit of a wet, dry cycle, but a little bit more on the evenly moist side. But then outside, really easy to care for. I love the fact that you can trim these a little bit. And as these get bigger, so let me check the size because I don't want to misrepresent myself here. I don't even know if it says. It just says tree. But I'm pretty sure they get somewhere, they're not huge. They're somewhere around like 2 to 4 feet tall. Yeah. So not a hugely, massive tree. Great for containers. Absolutely love these for containers. I'm always looking for something different to plant in a container on my front porch, wrap some lights on it so you can make a lot of, really kind of pretty holiday cheer. And once this gets a little bit bigger, you can use it for some cut greens too. Doesn't last quite as long as all the other conifers, but last week I did a webinar on cut greens, which I absolutely love using cut greens. I just did my mom's containers this past weekend. I'm gonna do mine pretty soon. So it's just a lot of fun to have those evergreen options around your home. And this is a great one that you can plant outside in a container or in the landscape. They're really, really cool. So lemon cypress is one of my favorites. There's a lot of different varieties of the cypress out there, but lemon cypress is a little bit of a dwarf and doesn't get super, super big. So come and check these out. We've got a great selection. This is a 1 gallon size. I think we've even got some of the little quart size. So this is a great little option that you can use in window boxes and containers, plant them in your landscape. They're absolutely awesome. So that's my number 4 is lemon cypress.
Yeah, you probably have seen a lot of lemon cypress in Mike's previous videos. He uses them a lot in containers because they're just that great of a plant. They smell amazing. They're perfect for decorating on, and they just hold their shape really well. So great, great plant.
And they're not super spiky either, which I always
like. No, they feel nice. That's why we kept touching it.
And the fragrance is amazing.
Awesome, awesome. I think.
So let's see. Deborah said, I put my holiday cactus under a tree in the summer and bring them into a garage in the fall, and then I bring them inside to force them to bloom when I want. Awesome.
That's awesome, Deborah.
Great.
You already know what you're doing.
Yep. You're a pro. All right, so now we're on to number 3. So Carly's up on number 3.
My number 3, yay! So if I can just reach around here very delicately. So my number 3 is the Moth Orchid, and we carry these year-round in houseplants. However, they're one of the best things to gift as a holiday present because although orchids seem intimidating to new houseplant owners, they're actually not that difficult once you get to know them a little better. So it's just talking to them in a way to get to know them, just like a friend would. But we have them really beautifully decorated. You can see these little sparkly tendrils up the sides, and then they have gorgeously decorated them in houseplants with these tulle wrappings. So it's already a perfect present. You can just hand it to somebody just like this, and it's obviously gorgeous in the waterfall shape, and the particular ones that are on sale right now are the waterfall moth orchids. So and because they're called that because they're in this kind of looped waterfall shape, so the blooms will be facing front. Of course, you can shape your orchids pretty much however you want as they grow their new stems, but this is a really, really great option for new orchid owners. Moth orchids are probably the easiest orchids to take care of. They don't need a ton of light to live. I have mine kind of in a dark corner. And they like to go a little dry between waterings. The best way to tell if moth orchids need water, and you can kind of see in the roots down here, is if these little roots kind of turn a grayish green color, which they kind of look to be right now. They probably could go a couple more days without water. Our houseplant people are pretty good about watering everything, so these probably could go a little longer. But you'll want to water them when those are looking a little on the grayer side. And when you have them in containers without holes like this, you want to be careful with waterlogging these orchids. Orchids generally grow on the side of trees in the wild. When I was in Hawaii, I saw them growing on the side of trees. It was absolutely amazing. And so they usually live in bark, especially moth orchids. Some orchids live in a more sphagnum moss mix of bark and sphagnum moss. Some live almost entirely in sphagnum moss. It just really depends on the type of orchid you have, but moth orchids specifically usually live in a lot of bark. So just making sure those roots have enough air and enough drainage is really important to this orchid. And once these blooms do expire, don't throw your moth orchid away. It will come back. You just have to take care of it a little bit and love it a little bit. So it will just be the leaves, but I think the leaves are really gorgeous. Just the plant as it is without the blooms is a really beautiful plant. And you can the best part I think about moth orchids is that you can regrow blooms from the same stem. So you don't have to cut the stem all the way back if you don't want to. You can just try to train it to grow from the same stem again. And that gets a little complicated, but once you kind of know what to do, it's fairly easy. So if you see the last nodule right here, where it hasn't bloomed, you'll want to cut this stem right after this one probably has fallen off. And then you'll kind of clip it to there and hope for the best. Fertilizing it helps. Lightly fertilizing throughout the summers are best. And then I probably fertilize maybe once or twice in the winter. You don't want to do it too often, even if you're trying to get it to rebloom. Watering also doesn't happen as often for houseplants indoors in the winter. So this is a really great plant. It's definitely a project plant. You'll keep getting it to rebloom over its lifetime. And I think they're just a load of fun. I have a lot of orchids at my house. I got kind of obsessed with them when I started learning about houseplants. We also carry a lot of varieties of orchids here at the garden center, besides moth orchids, including lady slippers or pachypedilums, oncidiums, dendrobiums. The list goes on, and it just really depends on what kind of variety we were getting that week, but we got new stuff all the time. So great house plant to have for the holiday season. Also just visually gorgeous. Who doesn't love an orchid bloom? So that is my number 3.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love orchids. They are intimidating for the beginner, but they're actually very, very easy. Know lots of people that unfortunately give them away or toss them. Hopefully they don't. But you can buy moth orchids constantly blooming, and man, I will tell you, the blooms last on a moth orchid.
That is true.
My favorite story is I did a display, I think it was this spring, for a company, and we did this really pretty display, and I put some moth orchids in there, and I know they got neglected. I mean, like, severely neglected. But I went back, picked them up, and I actually took them home, and the blooms lasted like another 3 months on them. I mean, typically it's about a 2 to 3 month time frame, but they must have bloomed there for a month and then in my house for 2 to 3 months. So I mean, man, the blooms can just last on those things.
Yes.
They're awesome.
Yes.
So even if they only bloom once a year for you, it's about a quarter of the year, so you can't beat that.
Yeah.
I don't know of another plant that really blooms as long as those.
Right.
So great one. All right, so now my number 3, or let me just check. I think we're good. So Eleanor said, intimidating. I agree. So pretty though. I agree. They are slightly intimidating, but they're really pretty easy. I mean, and that's what we're here for at McDonald Garden Center, is you can come and ask us questions anytime.
Yes.
So you can even bring in your plant if you want to bring it in, or bring in some pictures. You know, it definitely helps to see it. But typically, you know, it's watering and light, and moth orchids don't need a whole lot of light. And watering, you know, a good soaking every once in a while, and you're pretty good. And just watch those roots. They tell you. Whenever a plant can tell you a little sign of when they need to water. Like, I love my peace lily, because man, I just let those things, once they go wilt, I go, okay, you need to be watered. So really, we've got some great techniques to help you along the way. Moisture meters, all those different things. So don't be intimidated.
Yeah, and Mike also has a whole seminar dedicated to orchids on our website. So if you want to check that out, his goes into really big detail on moth orchids and varieties of orchids. And we have a lot of orchid help handouts and all kinds of stuff on our website. So just keep a lookout on there. And
great experts here in store and you know, on the floor out there every day. So you can always come in and ask us as well. All right. So now we're going to move on to my number 3, which is going to kind of be a little similar to one of hers, which was the lavender. I'm going to do rosemary. But these are the rosemary topiaries that we get in. I love these rosemary cones. They're absolutely amazing. They came in a little bit later this year than normal. So if you came in early and expected to see them and you didn't see them, trust me, we got them now. They're gorgeous. They are a little bit bigger than normal. They're in about a 1.5, almost 2 gallon size pot. But it's a really, really nice one. And the fragrance on these are absolutely amazing. I love the fact that you can bring them indoors, so you can grow these inside if you want to. I really feel like a lot of people are more successful outside with them. But to bring them in for the holidays for a couple days to get that aroma and that fragrance, wrap a couple strings of lights on them, you know, slip them in a pot, put it by, you know, a window somewhere indoors. They are absolutely awesome. And of course, you can cook with it. So, you know, when you're starting to think about all the Christmas goodies that you're going to cook, you know, think about using some rosemary. And then you can go plant this outside. Now, if you just let this thing grow, then it's going to grow into a nice big size bush, you know, 4x4 bush. This is Tuscan Blue, which is one of the most popular varieties out there. And so again, growing them outside, you can grow these in containers very successfully. They like a little bit of an arid, dry situation. Keep them moist initially. So that's kind of my biggest advice with rosemary, is while they're young and they don't have a developed root system, water them a little bit more, especially when you're planting them in the ground. Give them a good soaking every 2 to 3 days for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and you'll be good to go. If you plant it now in the winter, you really won't have to really water too much at all. So it's a great time to get these. Have them inside for the holiday season. It's a great holiday plant, great gift item, especially for that chef in your life. You know, if you've got somebody that loves to cook, this is a great option for you because they love to use fresh herbs, trust me. So a great gift item, but also something that you can bring inside and then go and plant outside. And you get a nice big shrub eventually. You can keep these sheared. So if you want to keep this nice kind of pyramidal shape, this cone shape, then, you know, just shear them every so often. Even if you're not going to use the herbs, you can always take the cuttings and bring them inside just for the aroma, or you can dry them. So you got lots of opportunities there, but you can just shear them just to shear them to keep them a nice pretty shape. And since I'm talking about shape, I'll show you this little patio tree one too. So I love this little guy. Comes in this nice little kind of terracotta, almost reddish colored pot. But I love this guy because this has been, the hard work has been done for you. So you've got this nice stem. So this is basically was a shrub that they have trimmed over time. So, you know, a lot of effort went into this little guy. But you have this nice, perfectly straight trunk now, and then you can just keep developing the top. You can keep trimming it up a little bit and keep limiting it up just slightly, but really it's just letting this kind of top get a little bit more on the bigger and fuller side, and then you've got this great little patio tree. These are awesome in containers. Underplant them with some pansies in the fall or winter, and then you can do a lot of different things, of course, in the spring. Just a really, really excellent container plant, or even in the landscape, just have a small little tree like this. So I think this is Tuscan Blue as well. Yeah, Tuscan Blue. But this is a really nice one. The only thing that I will give you advice on is this is a shrub. It wants to grow as a shrub. So you're going to see something. I grabbed this one specifically to see if I can show you. You're going to get a lot of these little sprigs down here. These little suckers is what you might call them. Just go constantly keep those picked off. So, you know, get a little pair of pruners and make sure you get those picked off. And then that way you can keep your top growing and you keep your little suckers from coming up and eating up all this hard work that was put into getting this nice straight stem. Yeah. But rosemary, awesome one. This is my number 3, easy to grow inside or out. Bring it inside for a few days. If you're gonna try and grow it inside, brightest possible light you can possibly get, and then watch the watering there. It's more of an evenly moist inside rather than the dry arid that it likes outside once it's established.
Yeah, good point.
Yep.
That's perfect. I love the little tree. And those 2 of those would be really good for either side of your door frame or your porch. And it, like Mike said, put some pansies in there. Just be a whole little setup. It's adorable.
Tie a little bow to the trunk.
So cute. Awesome.
All right, so now we'll go to Carly's number 2.
Oh my God, we're already at number 2.
I know, we're moving through.
We're just rolling on in. So my number 2 is Amaryllis, one of our favorite holiday bulbs here at the garden center. And Mike picked out a absolutely gorgeous one for me. I mean, look at that thing. It's as big as my head. It's so pretty. But Amaryllis bulbs are really awesome and special because we always carry them here at the garden center. And one of the first times I've ever seen one in real life was here. And I could not believe how big the blooms were. So they're really stunning for holiday decorating, especially indoors, obviously, but also just anywhere in your house. I think even like by the Christmas tree or in the windows or anywhere, you could just kind of load your house up with amaryllis and it would be a really stunning display. And kind of shocking too, because I feel like people kind of forget about amaryllis just because it is a bulb and you don't expect bulbs to bloom right now. Right. But they're really easy to take care of while they're blooming, and since they are bulbs, they do rebloom, so you can keep your bulbs, either you can throw them out in your landscape. I know people that do that, they might rebloom for you in the late spring sometimes. I've heard of that happening, or you can just keep them in pots in your house, keep taking care of them, and they would rebloom for you the next Christmas. So that's also really great for people who just really love taking care of plants, bulbs, any kind of house plant in general. But I think this one's really gorgeous. This is one of our double bloomers, so you'll get a lot of blooms on this one. We also have single bloomers if you really just want that high impact. And we also have a ton of colors. So there's obviously this gorgeous red, there's variegated colors between pinks and whites, just white, just pink, multi-frillied like blooming. This is probably like a single bloom, but they have the really, really frilly ones that almost look like peonies to me. Absolutely amazing, really stunning plant. And of course, this is a really great gift, especially if you're giving gifts to the gardener, to your gardener friends or your gardener mother or father or whatever. And I just really love this plant. I think it definitely gets underscored on the overall houseplant, holiday houseplants. And we have a blog on our website right now about Amaryllis and paperwhite bulbs, with bloom calendars on them if you want to peruse them. We are a little past planting now to bloom on Christmas if you're starting from a bulb, but in houseplants we have ones that are either already blooming or about to bloom. And of course, if you want to grab bulbs that will bloom a little later, you can have that New Year's Amaryllis, which is definitely a hit. So don't forget about your New Year's Amaryllis, and even your paperwhites as well, because those are adorable. They'll add a really great little, almost glittery look to your bulb, selection in your house. So just fill your house with gorgeous blooms this holiday season with Amaryllis, and that's my number 2.
Awesome. Yeah, I love Amaryllis, love paperwhites, and so she's right. You can put these out in your landscape. You can plant them like a bulb. Typically what I will do is enjoy them indoors. I don't like to go and plant them in the middle of the winter if I can avoid it, but you can. It really won't affect it too much. But think of Amaryllis like a daffodil in the spring. It blooms in the spring. So daffodils, tulips, amaryllis that are planted in the landscape, paperwhites, which are another type of daffodil, they need to go through a cold period. So when the cold period ends after winter, the foliage comes out and it starts to bloom. And so if you plant it in the winter, you might get that spring bloom again. But that foliage that is up, I usually like to let it kind of molt off by itself and then go plant it in the spring season. It typically doesn't matter too much. If you're going to grow it indoors year after year, she's right, just leave it inside. And then typically you want to try and get it a little bit on the cooler side to kind of get it to bloom back for you during the Christmas time frame. A lot of people will take them out of the soil, dry them out a little bit, and then go through the chilling cycle, which is really what our paperwhites that are prepared. So if you're ever looking at your bulb selection here at the garden center, we've got our bulbs to plant out in the landscape, of course, but then you've got prepared bulbs. And our amaryllis are prepared, our paperwhites are prepared, and that means they've put them into a chilling process. So they think that they're coming out of winter and going into spring because you're growing them inside in a consistently warm spot. So really, really great choice. I love amaryllis. Put a little twig in there, some branches with some glitter, tie a little bow to it. Super, super awesome. You can make a really great display with those, and there's lots of different ways to grow them. I will throw this out there because I know we get a lot of questions about the waxed amaryllis. Waxed amaryllis are not bad. I will say typically they're a little bit more expensive than I think is probably worth for the amaryllis, but it's not really like the most horticulturally sound thing either. Yeah. So tends to be something that we've done a couple times with limited success, but that's why we like to grow them in soil personally. You can grow them in glass containers either. Yeah. So you can take them, put them in a glass pot, like just a nice little glass pot back here, and then just put some mulch and stuff like that. They don't need a lot of soil to grow in. They just need to think that it's spring.
Yeah, so. Yeah. So just have your house at a great temperature.
Yep. All right. So now we're going to move to my number 2. I don't think I saw any questions. All right. So my number 2, thinking of the outdoor spaces, are camellias. I absolutely love Cesanqua camellias. There's tons and tons of varieties of camellias, especially when you group in the japonicas as well. But the reason that I love Cesanquas, and I'll make it really easy because I don't really like to use a lot of the Latin terminology as much as I possibly can, but Cesanqua is a fall blooming camellia, whereas a japonica is a spring blooming. So that's how I'll refer to them from now on, is a fall blooming camellia is what you plant right now, and you can plant spring blooming camellias too. But spring blooming camellias are a little bit more finicky. They really like a little bit of shade. You see gorgeous ones growing underneath pine trees, oak trees, so they need to kind of have some big, trees around them to kind of protect them during that summer heat. But you can get huge blooms on some of those spring japonica varieties. On the fall blooming varieties, then you've got a lot of the smaller blooms. And the reason that I love Cesanquas, the fall blooming camellias, is because they bloom profusely right now. I mean, they are just absolutely gorgeous this year. Nice little waxy leaf, small blooms, but tons of them. So with your spring blooming camellias, you're gonna get the big, huge blooms, but you won't get as many. You'll get a lot, but you won't get as many. But with these fall bloomers, you get a ton of these little tiny flowers. And they are so easy to grow because they can grow in full sun or shade. So you really don't have to worry about where you're growing them. Whereas the spring bloomers, you gotta be a little bit more particular. But with the fall bloomers, they can take sun or shade. They're pretty fast growing, so they're not quite as slow as the spring bloomers. And they grow in 2 different sizes. So this is my Shishi Gashira. Shishi Gashira is more of a pink color. You can see that really pretty bloom. And Bonanza is typically our red bloomer. Shishi Gashira is the most popular because it's super easy to grow, and it grows kind of in a wider shape, so it doesn't get quite as tall. So typically in a landscape, 3 to 4 feet tall by about 5 to 6 feet wide. So you can really cover some space with this. I know a lot of people are always looking for a plant that'll really kind of fill some yard space for them. You know, I've got this huge bed and I want to plant 5 plants, but I need to cover like 30 feet. Well, this is a great option for you, Shishi Gashira. And then, of course, there's the other camellias that are upright growers in the fall blooming group. And this is the Yuletide. So you can see that, you know, Yuletide flower is one of the most popular varieties because it's got that single yellow flower with that, or red flower with the yellow stamens. So you get that really pretty color. Yuletide grows about 8 to 10 feet tall by about 4 to 5 feet wide. So a very tall columnar shape. I've seen them bigger. I just bought my house 5 or 6 years ago. There's a huge one in the backyard. I mean, it's got to be 20 feet tall. I've actually limbed it into a tree. So you can do lots of different things. But this is my all-time favorite. And this is the Autumn Rocket Camellia. So Autumn Rocket is super, super popular right now. Kind of sometimes have been hard to kind of come by because they're so popular. And so a lot of landscapers are using them up. But we've got a great collection, and it's one of our premium plants that we sell a lot of. So we pretty much try and stay in stock on these year round. But it's a great time to get them right now. They are blooming so profusely this year. It's absolutely amazing. The Yuletide will bloom almost through Christmas, hence the name. The Autumn Rocket typically will finish a little bit before Christmas, depends on the weather. This year we've had a pretty warm season, so they're holding on pretty well. But I've just planted some of these in my yard. I planted some in my mom's yard about, I don't know, it's probably been 7 or 8 years now, but they are absolutely stunning. Brick house climbing, I mean, it looks like they're climbing up the wall. And everybody comments that walks by about how pretty they are because they are blooming so profusely. Typical size is about 8 feet tall by about 2 to 3 feet wide. So a nice tall columnar plant, great for a little hedge, but you can let them get bigger too. You can let them grow naturally, or you can trim them nice and columnar. So it's a great little framing plant for the landscape. Also great for small hedges, but also great just to let grow naturally and see what they do. Biggest, most important thing here is for blooming period is don't prune these after the 4th of July. That's when they start to set the buds. Both varieties, spring bloomers or fall bloomers, after 4th of July, don't prune them anymore. That goes for azaleas and camellias, your kind of southern, blooming landscape plants, your evergreens. And that's what I love about them too. Evergreen, and they bloom, full sun, shade. You can't beat it. A couple different shapes and sizes, lots of different blooms color. It's my one of my all-time favorites for the evergreen blooming shrubs. Yes. So that's my number 2 is camellias, the fall blooming camellias.
Yay! When I get a house, I'll get a Autumn Rocket Camellia, probably is my first shrub, because it, like Mike said, it just, the ones out there that are huge that we have in larger buckets are just insanely full of blooms. It's really incredible to look at, and of course the white goes with everything, so can't go wrong with an Autumn Rocket. So I can't believe we're at number 1 already, but all right, here's number 1, my favorite.
Some fanfare.
Yay! Anyway, I have picked out the ultimate holiday houseplant, which is poinsettias, for my number 1. So I have a couple different ones. So I have picked out a couple more rarer ones that you may not see at every, grocery store or, Home Depot or anything like that. We have specialty houseplants here at McDonald Garden Center. We're one of the largest providers of houseplants in the state of Virginia. So if you need houseplants, we got them here. We have an amazing houseplant buyer, and she really just works very hard on getting the most excellent varieties in, and that includes poinsettias. So we have a really beautiful specimen here. This is the Jingle Bell variety. This is a 6-inch poinsettia. And we carry a lot of 6-inch poinsettias. That's probably the most popular size that we carry. And we carry everything from the regular red to white, pinks, you know, variegated ones like this. The Jingle Bell is particularly really beautiful because it almost reminds you of that kind of Thai constellation look. And I picked this one out because it had a really beautiful variegated one in the middle here. And I think that poinsettias just really make the house feel like Christmas. To me, my mom always liked poinsettias. She would always put like the lifelike ones in our tree as when I was a kid. And I just really always liked how they looked. Poinsettias are actually tropical plants from the southern part of Mexico. And they have been cultivated over many years to be Christmas plants in lots of locations around the world, especially America. And I found that over time you can try to keep them for year-round. There's a lot of qualms about that among the plant people world, but because they're a little difficult, I would say they're plant care people like to do those for year round, but I just like to enjoy them for the holiday season, and I like to just decorate my house full of them. They like to be moist pretty much most of the time. You don't really want to let these go dry because they are part of the Euphorbia family and they keep all of their strength here in their stems. If you broke off a leaf here, just like any euphorbia, either a cactus or those euphorbia that Mike showed you earlier, you would see some white milky sap that comes out of these plants. And because of that, you should probably try to also be very delicate with these plants, because even though these look like flower blooms, these are actually the leaves that have turned this color, and they're called bracts. And the bracts will eventually just keep blooming out of the top of the color, and then they'll eventually become this leaf color. They're a very interesting plant. There's nothing like them except for themselves, but I have a couple other varieties here as well. Mike pulled this very cute 4-inch Picasso variety. This one's really gorgeous. It almost looks like
paint.
Yeah, like spray paint was flicked up on it. And it also is a really pretty coral orange color, which is kind of unusual for poinsettias. I usually find the reds all the time, which we have plenty of. If you love the red color, I do love the red color. But if you're looking for something a little different, and this one actually has a pretty good example of the actual flowers in the middle here, because these are the bracts, and these are actually the flowers here in the center. So when you're purchasing poinsettias, you want to try to find the tightest flowers you can for the longest blooming poinsettias. If you find them all fallen off, they're probably not going to be colorful for much longer. They'll probably go into dormancy when they start turning completely green again. Yep. And eventually they'll have a bloom cycle again, but getting them to that bloom cycle is kind of difficult occasionally. Yeah. Mike probably has some comments on that. But they're really fun during the holiday season, and I even brought in a really big one so you can get a scope on the amount of variety we have here. But that one, I mean, that's bigger than awesome. Me and Mike. This is a pretty much, I think it's an 8-inch. Yep. And this is a variety poinsettia. This of course has the red, the pink, and the classic white. We also carry a Blanco poinsettia, which is true white, I would say. It says white as snow instead of this kind of off-white color. But absolutely gorgeous combinations. We have burgundies. You really got to come and see them for yourself here at our year-round locations, because we have just a gorgeous array of poinsettias right now, and there's nothing like getting a poinsettia for Christmas. I love giving them myself. I just think it's really reminds me of home. So definitely come and check us out for poinsettias, and that's my number one. Yeah, poinsettias are absolutely amazing. They make the holidays. They're great gifts. I mean, absolutely one of the best gifts you can take to a dinner party or anything around the holiday season. My mom keeps asking me, when am I getting my poinsettia? Well, I gotta buy one for her. So I know it makes the holidays. And if you're looking for maybe a different change, like she mentioned, some of the different variegated styles and the Picassos, there's a lot of cool different ones out there. So if you're of the younger generation and you're kind of saying, I feel like poinsettias are old, we've got lots of different options for you. But in the poinsettia world, the varieties, there's a huge selection of them. And if you always want to add a little light to them, let me see that little 6-inch red one.
I love this cluster light. I always bring this out. Whenever we talk about poinsettias, it's one of my favorite lights. You get all these strands of lights, and it's super easy just to separate these out. And then you just take this and you pop it right into the center, and you can just let those lights kind of dance all around. So it's really easy to decorate a poinsettia and add a little light to it with these Invisilights, this little cluster of Invisilights. Really, really cool thing that you can do. You just break those out and work them all around, and it's a great way to add a little bit of light to your poinsettias, make them a little bit different. Great way to add something to your gift. So always my favorite thing to talk about when we talk about poinsettias, adding these little Invisilights to them. So it's a lot of fun.
It's just gorgeous.
Yeah,
yeah, I love doing that for mine as well. So that's a really great touch. And you can do that to all your houseplants during the holidays. Right. So don't forget about lights. We have a lot of Invisilights that are perfect for decorating any of the plants I've talked about today for houseplants. Yep. There's also even Invisilights with weather protected battery boxes. So you can decorate your lemon cypress, your camellias if you want, anything that you're feeling that lives on your porch and that needs to be rain protected. Yeah. So it's a really great option.
So we probably should have swapped number ones because mine's not as exciting as poinsettias for my number one. But it is one of my all-time favorite plants. It's becoming one of my favorite plants even more so as I deal with a situation in my yard, which is big trees, very dry soil a lot because of that big root system, and lots of shade. And I'm always looking for something that's evergreen, doesn't require a lot of maintenance. I don't want it to get too big. I just need almost like a ground cover that gives me a little show every once in a while. And there's nothing better than Hellebores. So Hellebores are one of my all-time favorites. We're getting into Hellebore season. So these are super durable plants, I will tell you. Give them a little bit of care at first. I'm not saying just plant it and forget it. It's not, a cactus or a succulent where they don't need any water or care. But this is a great option for anybody that is in this area, in the Hampton Roads area, that is looking for something that's tough, durable, can take dry, shady conditions once it's established. But these are awesome plants. And I love the fact that they bloom in the winter time frame. So these are blooming actually a little bit earlier than they typically would in the landscape. So all the ones that I planted the past couple of years haven't started blooming yet. Typically that's going to happen in the January, February time frame. But because it's in a container and it's a little bit confused as to what the season is, then they're blooming already. So there's lots and lots of great varieties, lots of different sizes too. So some that have big leaves, some that have white blooms, maroon blooms. I grabbed one here. It's got this great looking maroon bloom. So this one, I'll talk about this one real quick, real fast. This one is, I think it's called, the Camelot. So this is the Camelot series, but the reason I've grabbed this one is because it's got more of an upright bloom. I think a lot of people don't love Hellebores because they tend to hang like this, which I personally don't mind. I kind of like them. I think they remind me of an orchid, like a lady slipper orchid or something. Yeah. But a lot of people are looking for something that maybe show their face a little bit more. And so if you're looking for something that's going to look upright at you a little bit more, we've got those. Love the back of the bloom as well. It's got that kind of striping in that pink color. And then you get that great white face with that lime green center. And then the maroon one, this one's called Frost Kiss Anna's Red. So there's tons of different varieties out there. Some people are becoming more Hellebore collectors too. So the fact that there's so many varieties, a lot of people are becoming a little bit of a collector out there. I love the foliage on this because it's got a little bit of that variegation in it. And these are evergreen. So, I mean, really, they're pretty easy to grow. Like I said, once they're established indoors, outside. And really what I mean by established is just watch them. Hellebores are a great one because they'll kind of tell you too if they need some help. So I've got mine planted underneath 4 gigantic oaks that suck up all the moisture pretty quickly. So every once in a while I will go out there and just give them a little soaking of water because I'll see the leaves kind of laying flat on the ground like that. And that's a sure sign that I need to get out there and water. Mine actually looked like that the other day. We've been really dry in the area, but I knew this rain was coming. So hopefully it continues to rain throughout the day and my Hellebores will be perked up when I get home. But they're super easy. Deer, rabbit resistant, nothing messes with them. Very leathery leaf, evergreen, hardcore plant, very winter hardy. Got one more variety here. Let's see what this one is. This one is Ice and Roses white, so that really pure white bloom. These aren't quite blooming yet, but I grabbed one that has the furthest bloom that's come out so far. But these are really awesome. Hellebores, you can get a great deal on them right now. They're a collectible type of plant, and there's a huge amount of varieties. And we will carry these from now all the way into about April or May. So that's how popular they are, and people are using them all the time now. Great for containers, but also great for the landscape. Absolutely love these guys. So Hellebores are my number one. I know it's not as exciting as Poinsettias, so we should have swapped there, but Poinsettias are a great one, but so are Hellebores, and we've got a huge collection of them right now. So I wanted to go through that and just kind of tell you about that one.
Yeah, no, Hellebores I think are just as exciting because they last even longer than Poinsettias, and they're a landscape staple. So even like my parents bought their house about a year ago, and they already had Poinsettias planted, and they literally look like a bush in the summer. Yeah. So great way to cover up your landscape if you have a lot of space you're wanting to cover up, but just kind of lowly. And then of course the blooms look gorgeous in the winter, so it adds that element that you're usually missing in the winter. So that's like, it's like the cone flower of the winter. So it really fills up your landscape with color even when nothing else really has color right now. So it's perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Carly, for joining me today, and I hope you all enjoyed this. We went through the list of our favorite holiday plants. I stuck to more of the outdoor arena, and she stuck to more of the indoor arena. But let's check and see if we've got any last-second questions. Let's see. So Nancy said, my camellias get really tall and leggy. So Nancy, yes. That is a very good comment. I almost thought you might have been my mom there for a second, because she keeps telling me the same thing, and her name is Nancy. But yes, the camellias can get tall and leggy, especially in a little bit of a shadier location, which is perfectly fine. Give them a little bit of a trim if you can. Cut them back. If they're really, really old, you can actually give them a pretty hard trim if you needed to, but give them a little bit of a boost. Do that in the spring, typically in about early to mid-March, somewhere in that time frame. Because they're evergreen, they need those leaves on there. So don't prune off a bunch of leaves going into the winter season, because they need those leaves to survive throughout the winter throughout the winter months. And then in the spring, once we start to see maybe a little bit of new growth on them, or we're pretty sure we're past our last frost date, which is typically around early April 5th to April 10th. You can prune them after that. Give them a little super thrive, which I always talk about, because that'll give them a little bit of a vitamin supplement boost, and that'll kick them back up and get them growing for you real fast and get you to fill them out a little bit. But in the shade, they are going to be a little bit thinner, I will say. In full sun, you'll get a much fuller plant, but in the shade, they'll thrive. They'll just be a little bit leggy, which I think is okay too. Let's see. Eleanor said, the flowers change color. When mine fade, they are chartreuse green. Yeah, so with your Hellebores, you get a lot of that kind of chartreuse green, lots of different colors that the blooms change throughout the season. Those blooms will stay on there for a long period of time too. So they make great little cut flowers as well. But yeah, great comment. Deborah said, will you show us how to do a bonsai plant once the holidays are over? Deborah, that's a great suggestion. We love suggestions. Thank you for making that. Yes, we can throw that into the mix for next year for our bonsai plants. We will probably devote a fair amount of our time in January and February to talking more and more about houseplants. So you might be seeing more of Carly in here with me. But we'll definitely do some houseplant exposés, and bonsai is a great option. So as long as we can get our hands on a good little collection of them, then we'll definitely do that. But Deborah, if you're ever in the area, then come and talk to our houseplant experts. They can show you how to do it. But that's a great topic. We'd love to know what everybody's looking for. So Eleanor said thanks, and then Eleanor said, yeah, the Hellebores, the flowers change. Yes, that is correct. They do change colors throughout the season. So, all right, I think we got everybody's questions. I hope everybody had a great time. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so we will be back next week for our last webinar of the year of the 2021 season, where we'll talk about all the great gift ideas. So if you're looking for those last minute gifts, we'll have some great suggestions for you for the gardeners out there, but really anybody, because everybody should be a gardener. Gardeners are happy people. And so hopefully you can come and see us soon. Let us know if you've got any other questions, and we'll see you all later.
All right, thanks everybody. We appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Bye.